All right. Well, welcome everybody to this month's community challenge recap. If you happen to be joining us for the first time, each month within the eLearning designers community, we do a challenge that gives folks an opportunity to practice putting their skills into practice, whether it's in Storyline or other software programs. And then at the end of the month, we do a live recap. Now, if you happen to be watching this recording on YouTube, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and that bell button if you'd like to get alerted the next time we do a recap like this. All right. Well, welcome everyone. This month's community challenge, our last community challenge of the year actually, was all focused on two things. First, practicing creating interactive timelines, whether it's in Storyline or whatever tool you might be using. And I also wanted it to be focused on giving folks an opportunity to reflect on their accomplishments over the last year, which I thought would make sense if you're doing an interactive timeline. So let me jump into sharing my screen, and we will start by taking a look at this month's challenge, and we'll look at some of the things that folks submitted, and then I'll show you how I chose to tackle this challenge in Storyline specifically. So give me one moment to start sharing my screen, and then we'll go from there. All right, very good. So here we are in the community. For those of you who, if this is your first time, I'll put a link to the challenge in chat where you can see the challenge, and you can also click in to see any of the submissions we received this month. I have to tell everybody, you know, this was I came up with the idea for this challenge totally last minute. As many of you know, I've been in the middle of a move, and then the holidays are busy. And so I wasn't exactly sure what kind of response we were going to get from this challenge. But I have to tell you, out of all the challenges I think I've done this year, I think we've done 4 or 5 of them maybe. I have to tell you, I'm so impressed by the visual design skills and the technical skills that people applied in their submissions for this month's challenge. I was very, very impressed. And I have to say, it kind of speaks to why I'm such a proponent of creating things, regardless of what tool you're using, Storyline or Rise or a different tool, creating things in these tools have nothing to do with work because it gives you full creative freedom. And you find that you get to apply different skills or do things differently from a visual design standpoint in ways that you wouldn't otherwise. So let's go ahead and go through some of the submissions that we received this month. Some of them have audio. You may or may not be able to hear them. This first one comes from Harpreet, and Harpreet's, I love the simplicity of this one. I'm actually going to mute the audio because I don't think anyone's going to be able to hear it, but I encourage you all to check out some of these, and I'll put the link in chat as well to this one. What I really like about this one, Harpreet, is the simplicity of it. Like, it's just really clean, and I love the graphics that you used with the different emojis and the road as a way to, you know, illustrate the beginning of 2021 all the way to the end. And so you can see, obviously, made it interactive here. So you were confused in January 2021, decided to pivot into a new career, but was undecided between ID or social media manager. Very good. All right. So May of 2021, thoughtful. Here, Harpreet, in searching for an ID bootcamp and other hands-on courses, she decided to go with ID Field. That's awesome. Happy Harpreet. Finally, she found the Learning Designers Academy. Oh, I appreciate that. And is ready to learn more about instructional design. Good. And December, she's completed her academy courses, now learning new skills. That's fantastic. Sounds like you had a full year. And like I said, I love the simplicity of this one. It's very, very clean. So thanks for sharing that one. All right, our next one comes from Emma. And as I look at this one, I have to say I just love the first thing that that I noticed that I really, really like is the use of the font here. This font here is, I don't know what font it is, but I think it's we're seeing this like resurgence of not script fonts, serif fonts, like these modern serif fonts, and I really like it. Okay, so phases of 2021, click anywhere to begin. Ah, I love this. Okay, so you decided to go with something like moon phases. Okay, very good. So let's click on this first moon phase. Okay, I started 2021 teaching from home and creating, and actually I'm gonna put this in chat real quickly. And it's Tan Ashford. Thank you for that. I haven't heard of that font. I'll have to check that out. Is it one that you can get on Google Fonts or some website like that? I'm curious. I'll have to check it out. No? Oh, okay. I'm sure there's similar ones out there. Okay, so Emma started 2021 teaching from home and creating engaging content so my students would feel more motivated and participate in online learning. I love that. Okay. As the school year continued, I taught virtually in 2 different hybrid settings and also in person. Okay. And then when the 2020 and 2021 school year ended, I was proud of the work that I did, but I realized that I wouldn't be able to grow my skills in education. And we have our full moon here. I started grad school in the summer of my master's in ed tech and really enjoyed my designing visuals for education class. That's awesome. In the fall of 2020, or in the fall, the school year restarted. And although we were back in person, things were almost harder than the last school year, I can imagine. And in the fall semester at work, I started my fall semester grad school, took an instructional design class, enjoyed learning about the process. And then I continued learning about instructional design process and theory after learning more upskilling. You've decided to transition. So I love this. So you're kind of telling, your transition from teaching into realizing you want to do instructional design. And I love the simplicity of using the phases of a moon as a visual metaphor or analogy, and the consistency you've done here, and even little things like the restart. Love that. Very good. Thank you so much, Emma, for sharing that. Okay, our next one. Ooh, this one's from Grace, and this one's really cool. Okay, let me copy the link and I'll put this one in chat. Okay, so this one also has some music in the background, and I have to say that adding background music to a course is a really, really hard thing to do, because it's hard to, and I encourage everybody to click on the link in chat. It's really, really hard to strike a balance between it being helpful, or I'll say passive, versus being distracting. And I think, Grace, you did a really good job balancing having the background music, but not having it being distracting. So I'm going to refresh this because I think there was a start screen. I don't remember. Okay, no, it just starts in here. Okay, so we'll do the start here. Okay, start a journey of exploration during the 6-month break of self-care and lockdown in 2020. I decided in the new year to explore more about e-learning. Okay, found an encouraged spirits and request. Very good. I love these simple little pop-up windows. Okay, so those do the same thing. Okay, I like that. So enrolled in a course. Very good. So you enrolled in an ID course, started learning more about instructional design, creating e-learning project, visual design. Very good. Oh, and I love this. Little subtle things like this. I don't know if anyone notices this. I'm gonna call them Easter eggs. When you hover over some of these, like this one is a video or a GIF. This one moves slightly. I love little things like that. Okay, so between April and June, I'll learn more about action mapping. Love action mapping. Setting learning objectives, creating a storyboard, creating mock-ups, your projects in Adobe XD, and keeping design principles in mind. Very good. Okay. E-learning project and articulate storyline. Started creating prototype and storyline and online tutorials. Very good. Publish your first e-learning project. And you have a link here. I'm going to click on it if you don't mind. Oh, I love the design here. Hotel Butler. Very good. Ask Winston. This is cool. Has like a game-like feel. I love this. Very good. Okay, let's go back to the timeline real quickly here. Okay, first project, and then down here, continue developing your portfolio. Very good. Learn more about taking the storyline. Very good. And your portfolio. Oh, let's take a look at this one. Oh, I'm going to click there. Very good. I love this, Grace. Looks like you did this in Google Sites. Oh, I love the simplicity of this, especially this cover image here. Very good. I'm going to check out more of that later. And then to be continued. Very good. I love this, Grace. Thank you so much for sharing. What I really like about this one, besides the background music, which I think is, like I said, it's hard to strike that balance. What I like what you've done here is that you've created a series of like these pop-up windows that keep popping up. Oh, not there. I didn't mean to click there. Like they're easily repeatable. And what I mean by that is you've created something where you can add multiple things to your timeline, and then you're just reusing the same slide layer and just changing out the content, which is really good when you're trying to be efficient with your design skills. Very good. Thank you so much, Grace, for sharing. Okay, go here. Lucas. Lucas is also using background music. I'm going to refresh this from the beginning here, so we can see the beginning. Okay, so Lucas Goal, instructional designer, e-learning developer. And I'll click here. It might be taking a moment to load on my end. Oh, nope, it's automatically proceeding. Okay. So you build e-learning experiences that are human-centered. Very good. Immersive. Goal-oriented. This year marked the start of my transition into instructional design. Very good. Learn more about my journey. Click next. Okay, let's do that. And we have another road analogy, which I like. Click the pins, progress through the timeline. Okay. Battling teacher burnout. I decided to change careers. Very good. Research alternative careers, customer success, sales, ID, user experience. Met with my mentor, Sarah. She's awesome. To chart a career in ID. Very good. September, completed ID learning pathway in LinkedIn Learning. Very good. Downloaded Articulate Storyline and began training. And now building my portfolio. Very good. That's awesome. What I like about this, Lucas, is that this is something you could very easily put on like an About Me page on your portfolio to tell prospective employers or hiring managers or clients a little bit about you. And it kind of serves a dual purpose. Not only does it allow you to tell people about you, obviously that's what it did, but it's also something that in tandem shows your storyline skills, which is I always think is a bonus. And then we have links to your social media. Very good. I love that. Very clean design. Thank you, Lucas. I really appreciate that. Okay, the final submission we had at last minute submission, and I'm not joking, last minute, like 5 minutes before we went live, is from Z. So Z, can I ask, what tool did you use to build this? I can never pronounce it. Geniali? I can never say it right. Whatever Z just put in chat. Okay, so I've never played with this tool, but it looks pretty cool, and I love the use of, I assume it's a motion path or some sort of animation happening here. I'm not going to get it right. Geniali. I can never say it. I've heard people say it, but I cannot say it. Okay, level 32 unlocked. Welcome to my 2021 calendar of blessings. Let's start there. All right. Landed a dream job as an instructional designer. I love the character you're using here to represent yourself. And I see there's a couple different ways we can navigate. They have some next buttons here, but I assume these are tabs. We'll click on these. You had a breakup. Aw. Obviously, that was sad. Okay, in March, you got your APTD certificate. That's awesome. Very good. Published your first e-learning course. Volunteer with ATD as an APTD member. That's awesome. Mentor. I love that with Rocket. Your first offshore opportunity. That's great. Joining the eLearning Designers Academy. Thank you, Z. I appreciate that. Started learning German. Oh, I love German. I wish I could speak German. I should start learning German as well. First eLearning Heroes Challenge and Community Challenge. Thank you so much. That's awesome. And HR Global Hero, that's cool. Fitness journey, that's great. And launch your portfolio. I love that. Z, where did you get these graphics from, if you don't mind me asking? Beyond. Oh, very cool. That's awesome. I love that. All right, so those were the submissions for this month. I want to thank everybody who submitted. These are, like I said, from a visual design standpoint, I've been so impressed with the visual design skills that people applied, and even some of the technical skills. It was super impressive this month. So thank you for that. So I'm going to show you, I went ahead and created My timeline, I created it yesterday in advance of this, but I wanted to use it as an opportunity to show some specific techniques that I like to use in storylines. So let me walk you through mine. Mine's pretty simple because I only had a little bit of time to do it. I'll put a link. Oh, let me put Z's in chat. I don't know if I did Lucas's either. Let me throw these in here in case anybody wants to see them, and then I'll put mine in chat as well. And then let me put mine in here. So here's mine, and there's a couple things that, like I said, it's very, very simple, but there's a couple things that I've been playing around with that I used in the creation of this. So the first thing I want you to notice is you'll see this little arrow here, this repeating arrow. I want to show everybody how to use repeating motion paths in Storyline to do that. And then you'll also notice these, I'm going to call them blobs. These little shapes are very subtly moving, which creates a nice little visual texture, right? And I'll show you how to do that in Storyline as well once I show it. So I'll jump into it. And what I wanted to create, and I'll show you my inspiration here. Let me go over to my Windows side. I wanted to show you where I got inspiration for this. I was looking on Envato Elements. I know I talk about Envato Elements all the time, but it's my go-to resource anytime I'm looking for inspiration. And I stumbled across this graphic here. And what I liked about it is, I like these just kind of, I don't know what to call them. They're these generic shapes that kind of just add visual texture. I like that. And then I also like the idea of creating something that was vertical, like an infographic, right? And so this is what I took inspiration from in creating mine. So let me go back to it, and I'll start it over here. And so as I go through this, I kind of wanted to create this like continual scroll thing going from one slide to the next. So I'll click Get Started here. And so February 2021, that's when I launched the eLearning Designers Academy. And you can see I have the little subtle moving blob thing there. And I have an image here that I can click on and zoom in on. That's another thing I want to show. You can see how it's cropped like a circle, but if I click on it, it shows the full image. So I'll show how I did that as well. And then I'll click to continue down here. Okay, we have another, moving blob thing. So April 2021, I launched the community. So a little screenshot there. Okay. July 2021, I filmed student stories with Marlena, Kathleen, and Jim. They're all students within the eLearning Designers Academy, and they're in the community as well. So I had a great opportunity to meet with all of them and film some student success stories with them. That was a lot of fun. I traveled to, Marlena came to Scottsdale. That's where I was at the time. She was there on a trip, and so I just happened to use that opportunity. And then I traveled to Milwaukee for Kathleen, and then North Carolina to meet Jim. It was a long week. Okay. In August 2021, I spoke at the ATD International Conference and Expo. What was cool about this, even though it's not the full-size image, what was cool about this is I did this session called they were called super sessions. And it was this huge stage in this very huge room, but they had 3 of these stages. And what was cool about the way they did this event was that it was 3 sessions happening simultaneously. And all of the people in the audience were wearing these little radio headsets. And so they could turn the channel to either watch my session or listen to me or listen to the other 2. And so what was interesting about it is that there was these 3 sessions happening simultaneously, but it was really quiet in the room because all the audio was being fed through the speaker or through the headphones. So that was a really cool event. All right, and then in November of 2021, I got to meet Bella Gatian. I was in, where was I? I was in Nashville speaking at ATD Core 4, and I got to eat some really good chicken with Bella Gatian and Kara North. So that was the simplicity of my timeline. It wasn't a whole lot in terms of content. Like I said, I was focusing more on what I could do creatively. So I want to show you some of the techniques on how I built this in Storyline. And you'll notice one of the interesting things too is that it scrolls up and down. So you have these slide transitions where you can go in either direction, which you can't really do in Storyline, but I'll show you how I kind of worked my way around into doing that. So I'm going to jump over to Storyline, or I'm going to jump over to my Windows side here. And like I said, this was my inspiration, this kind of vertical infographic here. And I also, I'm going to share this in chat. This is a tool that I've been using. It's called blobmaker.app. It's totally free. And this is where I'm getting these little blob shapes that I've been using in my course. So if I go here, these are just, shape, or they're technically SVG images. But what's cool about this tool is that you can just play with these sliders and create these different blobs that you can use. And there's little graphic elements, and you can change the color of them. There's some built-in colors, or you can put in your own hex code. But what I really like about it is that you can click on this little dice icon here, and it'll just generate random blobs, which I really like, which I thought was cool. So I do this, and then you download it, and it just downloads as a SVG. So, and you can make them more complex and do a lot of really cool stuff with them. So that's where I got those shapes. If anyone's interested, it's this little blob maker. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to show in Storyline and how I built this. So you can see here, my timeline is really a series of what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slides here, right? So here's my first slide, my year in review. And let me adjust this so you can all see it. There's my February 2021, April, July, August. So it's just a series of slides, right? So the first thing I thought I'd show was how I did the repeating motion paths. And you'll notice if I go back to the published version of it, it started with me just doing this repeating motion path here. And what I like about arrows like this that do this, you see this sometimes in apps. That's, I think, where I got most of my inspiration from. You now see them in different websites. And that's a great, oh, and Kate asks a really great question. How easy would this be to navigate using assistive technology? I'm not sure. I didn't have time to go on the back end and see how to make it accessible. You could, what you would probably have to do, Kate, in Storyline is I would have to, using my focus order, I'd probably just have to have a screen reader only focus in on the hotspots for navigation, and then the text, and then for what's being mentioned, and then of course alt text for the images. I could tell Storyline, like those little moving blobs, I could tell it to ignore it, which would make it more accessible. But I didn't get a chance to do that for this demo. But that's a really great question. Okay, so what I was saying here was these arrows here. I like them because they're great ways. Doing something like this is a really great way to provide a subtle visual indicator for the learner or the user to do something, right? And you can do them to the left or the right to tell somebody to get started. So let me show you how I did that in Storyline. So I have a hotspot here, which is actually what the learner is clicking on to move next. So I'm going to hide that in the timeline. And I'm going to zoom in here on my arrow here, and I'm going to add a motion path to it. And for those of you who aren't familiar with motion paths in Storyline, motion paths operate very similarly to motion paths in PowerPoint, if you've ever played with motion paths in PowerPoint. But the cool thing about Storyline is that you can do all sorts of interesting things with motion paths because they use triggers to control them. So what I'm going to do is from the Animations tab, I have motion paths. And you see there's all sorts of different motion paths you can choose from. If I want to create a motion path to make this arrow go down and then up, and then I want it to repeat that, go down and then up, I can't really use any of these basic ones here or even the shapes. What I need to do is a freeform one because I need to draw one that goes down to where I want it to go down and then up. So I'm going to do a freeform motion path, and I'm going to click just very subtly a little down arrow, and then I'm going to click all the way back to the top and double click to finish it. And essentially what that's done is it's created a motion path for that arrow that's going to move it down and then back up. And it's only going to do it once. And we'll see that in our triggers panel, because like I said, motion paths are controlled with triggers. It says move the next arrow along the freeform motion path. That's the name it gave it when the timeline starts on the next arrow. So if I preview this slide, you'll see it real quickly. It'll move that arrow. once it decides to load here. Okay. So you see how it moved? It just did it once, right? Which is fine. But I want it to repeat. So I'm going to replay that one more time so in case anyone missed it, I can get it to replay the slide. There we go. It just moves one time. But you can actually make motion paths repeat in Storyline by adding just one more trigger. So right now I have the trigger that says move the next arrow along the freeform motion path when the timeline starts on the next arrow, right? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this trigger. And I'm going to tell Storyline to do the same thing. It's going to do it. Move the next arrow along the motion path when, not when the timeline starts though this time, I'm going to do when animation completes, when it finishes moving on the motion path. So it's going to move on the motion path, and then when it finishes moving on the motion path, it's going to move it on the motion path again. And that in turn is going to make it continually repeat these two triggers over and over and over again. So let me preview this. I'll preview the slide. And there we go. And it's just going to keep repeating. Very simple way to create a repeating motion path. So you add the motion path once, and then you create a trigger that says repeat that motion path once it finishes the motion path, which creates kind of, an endless cycle. Easy peasy. You can do the same thing, though, with all sorts of other motion paths. So, for example, yeah, it's small but effective, right? Creates a little visual indicator for the learner on what to do. So if I wanted to do something with these little, I'll call them my blobs, right? If I wanted to have them subtly move like they are here, you can see it's very, very subtle. It's just it's like floating there, right? If I want to create that effect, I can do the same thing. Let me do it with this blob here. I'm going to move my slide up here. I'm going to add a motion path, and this time, though, I am going to use one of the built-in ones. I'm going to use a circle motion path. So if I just add a circle motion path, it's going to add this really, really big circle to it. And if I were to preview this right now, you can see it does a really quick circle. Like, that's way too quick. I don't need it to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple things. First, I'm going to make the motion path itself way smaller. I'm going to make it maybe like that big because I want it to move on a really small motion path so that the movement is subtle. That's the first thing I'm going to do. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the duration. Right now, it will complete that motion path in 2 seconds, which is way too quick. And I can make this number larger. The largest duration you can put for a motion path in Storyline is 59 seconds, which is a little bit of a limitation. I would love it if you could do more, but 59 is the highest number you can go. But what that's going to do is it's going to make it take a whole minute to do that movement. Now, if I were to preview this right now, I'll preview the slide here. It doesn't even look like it's moving. It is moving, but it doesn't look like it's moving. What's happening here is that you notice how if you look at this motion path here, it eases in and out that movement. It's not very abrupt. It's not doing this. It's kind of bouncing softly. Well, that's what it's doing here. You can almost see it moving now because it's easing into the speed. So what I want to do for these blobs is I want to turn off that easing in and out so that it doesn't speed up and then slow down as it gets to the end of the motion path. It's a continuous movement over the course of that minute. That's a simple setting. Let me show you how. So here's my blob, here's my motion path. Under path options, there is a direction. And I don't know why, I don't like it being called direction. Don't ask me why Articulate decided to call it. It's essentially the easing. So right now it's easing in and out, which normally works. Like for this arrow, it makes that movement much more natural, but I don't want that here. So I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to do none. Now, if I preview this, you will see there it's moving. It's subtle, but you can definitely see it moving. You can notice it moving, right? And to make it repeat itself, it's the exact same thing that I did before. So here is my trigger for move vector 1. I should have named it blob or something, along the circle motion path when the timeline starts on vector 1. I'm just going to duplicate that trigger. And I'm going to say move vector 1 along circle motion path 1 when the animation completes. And that'll make it repeat. And I can do the same thing for this one. I'll do that real quickly. So again, I'm going to add a motion path. I'll do a circle. I could technically do any shape if I wanted to. I've seen some people will do like to make like snowflakes fall. They'll do like a curvy motion path that goes across the screen to have it fall down, and then repeat that, and you create, falling snowflakes, or leaves or something like that, right? In this case, I'll do a circle. And in fact, I think doing something with motion paths would make a really fun challenge in the future. Okay, I'm going to do a small motion path. I'm going to set the duration as high as I can, 59 seconds. Path options, I'm going to turn off that easing. And then let me find the trigger for this thing. Where did it go? There it is. I'll duplicate it. And I'm going to move vector 2 along the motion path when the animation completes. So now you'll see they're both very subtly moving. I'm going to do one more thing. I don't want this object moving that way. It's moving clockwise for me. I want to move it counterclockwise. So they're both moving in opposite directions. So you can do that in Storyline as well with the motion path. Go to Path Options and reverse the path direction. And now it'll make it move counterclockwise. So they both kind of look like they're moving inwards, which I think can maybe help draw the learner's attention to the center of the screen where my text is. Okay, so let me pause there. Let's see what's happening in chat. Okay. Yeah, Lucas, motion paths are a lot of fun. You can do all sorts of interesting things with motion paths. You can actually, and maybe this should be a challenge in the future, you can actually trigger motion paths to happen based on learner interactivity. So you can have the learner click a button and then have a motion path happen. And you're going to be blobbing up everything, Ethan. I love that. Okay, Emma asks, can you rotate the shape with the motion paths? I haven't played around with them much. So that's a great question. Yes, you can, Emma. Let me show you how. So maybe instead of floating around, you wanted to make it look like the thing was rotating, right? So let me make this rotate, and then we'll move on from there. So I'm going to make this even smaller here, this little circle here. If I wanted to make it look like it's rotating, you want the circle to be small, or the motion path to be small. And what I'm going to do is under Path Options, you'll see there's Orient Shape to Path. And so what that means is as the object moves along the motion path, it will orient the shape to it. So you'll see it has a little rocket icon. Imagine if you had like a motion path like this where you wanted to show a rocket going like that. You would want to orient that object to that motion path. So the rocket doesn't look like this. It'll look like this. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense. So I'll show you. I'll orient the object to the motion path and I'll preview this. And you'll see it looks like it's rotating. The reason I don't go with the rotation in this case is because the bigger the object is, the faster it's gonna look like it's moving. So that's gonna take a minute to move around that. But it's rotating. It looks like it's rotating at least, right? Yeah. Okay, good. I'm going to reset that back to the way it was. Okay. So that's a little bit of what you can do with the motion paths. That's how I created those repeating motion paths. They're a lot of fun. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to show everybody real quickly, let me turn back on my hotspot. Before I do the slide transitions, I want to show the technique I used for the image zooming. This is a simple one, but I thought it was cool nonetheless. So you can see how it's cropped like a circle, but if I click on it, it expands like the full image. And that's a cool thing you can do in Storyline Simple. So let me insert my image here for my February event. I'll insert picture from file. Here's my image here. And I'm going to make this really tiny. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this feature, the zoom picture feature, it's a really simple little feature in Storyline where if you have a small image or you wanted a series of small images, you can create like this gallery-like effect. If you have the image, you make it small and then go to the Format tab, you can do a zoom picture. And if I click on this, what it does is it adds a little zoom icon to it that allows the learner to zoom in on the image. So if I preview the slide here, I can zoom in on the image. It's a simple, it's like the simplest form of interactivity in Storyline is to have somebody zoom in on the image, right? But you can also add a cropping effect to it to create that, to create what I have going on here, right? So if I wanted to do that, I can crop the picture, do picture shape under the Format tab, picture shape, do a circle, and it's not a perfect circle, but you get the point right now. And now if I preview it, there you go. When it zooms in, it gets rid of the cropping and it zooms to the full picture, right? So simple little effect, if anyone wanted to try that. Okay. So the final thing I wanted to show you, a cool technique. This is kind of a workaround. What I wanted to do, you'll notice here that I wanted the learner to be able to navigate back and forth through my timeline to make it feel like it's kind of moving in vertical space, right? If I click back, it pushes it down. But if I go forward, it pushes it up. Those are simply slide transitions in Storyline. The problem with slide transitions is that they only work technically in one direction. So let me show you what I mean by that. So if I wanted to add, say, a series of slide transitions to my slides here, right? I'm going to do a transition. I'm going to do a push. And I want it to push from bottom. So it's going to look like it's going from top to bottom, right? Well, if I preview my entire project, it'll work when I go down. When I move forward, it works, right? But if I go backwards, it still pushes down. It is technically going to the previous slide, but it doesn't look like that. It looks like it's pushing down, right? And that's confusing. So I wanted this backwards and forwards look and feel. So you can do this in Storyline. I wouldn't recommend it for something. It works well. Here's what I'll say. It works well for linear courses. And when I say linear courses, when you have a set of linear slides. And I would also recommend, it probably doesn't work. This technique wouldn't work well if you have a lot of content. And you'll see why here in a moment. But it's a cool technique if you're doing something simple like this. So in order to create that effect where it moves backwards and forwards, you essentially have to create an entire duplicate of that scene. So let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to duplicate this scene, the entire scene. Nope, not the slide. Hold on. Duplicate the scene. Let me click on my scene. There we go. I'm going to duplicate it. So I have an exact copy of it, right? And what I'm going to do is on these slides, my duplicate slides, I'm going to add the slide transitions, but in reverse. So rather than having all of these I'm going to remove all of them first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add the push transition, but I have it do the opposite. So it's going to go from bottom. Okay. So now I have one set of the slides doing the push transition from the bottom or the top. Wait, no, from top is what I mean. Going this way, and then the other one's going this way. And then what I'm going to do is on these slides here, anytime the learner clicks to go back, rather than it going to 1.1, I'm going to have it go to 2.1, which is my duplicate. So let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to have it jump to slide, not previous slide. I'm going to have it jump to 2.1. Now, the learner doesn't know otherwise where they've gone. It takes them to the exact same slide. It's just a duplicate of it. So I'll do the same thing for 1.3. So instead of jumping to the previous slide, it's going to jump to, so what is this, April? It's going to jump to February in my duplicate scene. And in July, rather than jumping back to April in scene 1, it's going to jump back to April in scene 2. And then on August, rather than jumping back to July in scene 1, it's going to jump to July in scene 2. And then instead of jumping back to August in scene 1, see, it takes some thinking here. I'm going to jump back to August in scene 2. And then what I need to do, see how it puts on top of one another? Then in my second scene, what I need to do is instead of jumping to the next slide, I needed to jump to February in scene 1. And then jump to slide, not next slide. So I don't want it to go to April in scene 2. I want it to go to April in scene 1. And this is going to go to July in scene 1. And then this is going to go to August in scene 1. And then August is going to go to November in scene 1. I think I got it all. Let's preview it. A lot of work. It's a clever trick. That's exactly what it is. It's a clever trick. It's a workaround. Okay, so we'll do that. Oh, did I not apply my transitions? Let's do that first real quickly. No. Okay, it's going to push from the bottom, and let's make sure these all have it. Yes, okay. Now let's preview it. And I'll just do it with a couple here. Okay, push, it goes down. If I go back, there we go. It looks like it goes back and forth. It's really going to a different slide. It's a duplicate, but the learner doesn't know otherwise, right? So you kind of get the point. Like, it works with linear slides. If you had a lot of content, you would want to wait until you completely developed it to do this. But it's a clever little trick if you're creating something simple like this, right? I wish there was an easier way to do this in Storyline, but there you go. You have the back and forth. All right. So that's our recap for this month. Any questions or thoughts before we wrap things up? Okay. Well, like I said, for those of you who might be watching the recording here on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button so you'll get alerted the next time. And then we'll be publishing our January 2022 challenge here in a couple of days. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, thank you all for participating. Thank you for watching, and enjoy the New Year's, and be safe, have fun, and I'll see you all next year. All right. Bye, everybody.